Lucy, I had a lot of fun working with you. Usually I work with dogs that have a lot of behavior problems. You have a couple quirks, but you're a really lovely dog. This is Lucy, obviously, and this is her roadmap to success. This is a bully stick. Don't ever give your dogs raw hides. They're soaked in bleach, formaldehyde, and ammonia, and a lot of other nasty chemicals. This is a bull's penis that's dried out, and there are no chemicals. So much healthier option for your dog. She's going to go elsewhere. Well, at least I had a little bit of Lucy for the beginning of this. So basically, we started off talking, usually I ask about exercise. She gets a good amount of exercise. Her guardians do a really good job of that. We talked a little bit about rules and structure. She's such a well-behaved dog. She really doesn't need as many as most of my clients' dogs. However, if a dog doesn't have any rules or structure, they can very quickly get the impression they need to be protective or possessive of you, or sometimes they offer you weird things like headless possums' bodies. And so because there's a window right here, and we're on a second story, so it kind of gives her a commanding position. So she's looking down. This is kind of helping her practice being a guard dog. So one of the recommendations for rules is I said that she should not be allowed to lay up here, which is usually little dogs that do it, but she does this a lot. But she's practicing being a guard dog. Now, we can also remove temptation. You can see all the nose marks on this window. Well, we can do what we call a Roman blind, which is where we cover the lower part of the window. Now, I like to use white paper because it really acts like a filter. It still lets sunlight in, but it's a diffuser essentially. So I would tape it on the outside of the window so she can't scratch it off. Just, we're in the Midwest, we have storm jam windows. So right on the inside and just in the bottom, like about 60-70% of this window. So every time she comes over here, she can't look out. So she doesn't get the validation or reward. And after a while, she'll get out of a habit of coming over here and looking out the window. Let me see. Since she's such a good dog, sleeping with the guardians, which we didn't even talk about, is fine. I would try to make it more of an invitation on the furniture, but since she's such a well-behaved dog, I don't think this is much of a problem either. I did say that when the humans are eating here, she's normally right up in their business. They don't give her people food, but just being within 7 feet of someone who has a high-value item like food or a chew toy is disrespectful in the dog world. That's a way of challenging for it. So I'd say when the humans are eating here, she should not be allowed to be in, kind of like there's a square that goes around the couch, so it makes it kind of a little bit of square around the table. Now, we can also set her up for success to help her practice these sort of things. When we're actually eating a sandwich or whatever, we're worried about eating. We're hungry, and then the dog's here, and then we're trying to do two things at once. So every once in a while, have a snack, and then have your partner help you out. Hey, I'm going to have a snack. Can you practice being the enforcer? I went over the 4 escalating consequences. I actually went over 3 because she's such a good dog. She doesn't need the 4th. But the escalating consequences are ways of disagreeing with the dog. And the 3rd one is a great way to establish invisible boundaries. So sometimes what I would do is practice eating a snack or just microwave some bacon or roast beef or something like that that smells. And then sit down and pretend like you're eating if you're doing it yourself. When the dog approaches the threshold, you hiss. When it crosses the threshold, you stand up. If it lingers, you march towards it. And eventually the dog learns when they're eating, I have to keep 7 feet boundary distance away, which is respectful in the dog world. Another rule would be that the dog's not allowed to be in the kitchen when we're preparing food. I would also have the same sort of thing, like if you're out, it's spring, so we'll have another 2 minutes before it gets ridiculously hot. But if we have those 2-week period of time where we're actually having some people out and we're eating outside, there's a deck, I would kind of draw a line around that. So she's allowed to be there, but not within 7 feet of the table. Another rule, I make the dog sit before I open the door. I go to the door and I say, sit once. If the dog doesn't sit within 3 seconds, I walk away, I sit down, and I wait. I'm preoccupied with something else. Playing a little hard to get is very beneficial for a lot of dogs. It's a great way to help shift the leader-follower dynamic. So I ask the dog to do the smallest thing to do as a dog and sit. If it can't be bothered to sit, I can't be bothered to open the door. So I walk away for 1 minute. And after 1 minute, and set a timer because it'll go by too fast or too slow. After 1 minute, go back to the door and tell her again, sit, and don't ask. Sit. 1, 2, 3 in your head. If she doesn't sit by 3, walk away this time for 2 minutes. Next time we'll walk away for 4 minutes, then for 8 minutes. Keep doubling length of time till eventually when you go to the door and say sit, boom, that butt hits the ground. Then you fly the door open as soon as she puts her butt on the ground. After a while, she'll go sit at the door as her way of saying she'd like to go outside. And eventually I would do it both directions. So she sits to go out or she sits to come in. I do that at your front door. If you go to Starbucks, well, this is Omaha. We don't have as much. In California, you can take your dog everywhere. But if you go someplace with a dog, make her sit before you open every door. I also went over my tips for helping a dog stay calm on a walk. There is videos on my website that show this. Message me, or you can just go to doggoneproblems.com. If you're looking at it on a website or on a desktop, in the red bar on the right side, there's a section called Quest Ed. If you're looking on your phone, it'll just be press the menu button. It'll be down there. You're looking for something called Dog Training Tips. On that page, on the right side on a desktop or at the bottom of the page on a phone is a search box. Search in calm leash, and you can come up with this video where I showed you how to do it, what we talked about here in the session. I'm not going to go through it here because it's a long video, but if you don't have the dog gets excited for the leash, go through that. Remember to practice at times when you're not leashing your dog up, so the dog understands that it's just, because it's really classical conditioning. Just because the leash comes out doesn't mean we're always going for a walk. But also recreating situations where the dog gets overexcited and helping the dog practice and stopping the second the dog starts getting excited without having the final act is a great way to desensitize the dog. And just like us, dogs are going to be more prone to making mistakes when they're overstimulated, overworked up. So we help the dog practice being calm before we leash them up, before we give them permission to eat their food, before we let them out the door, before we pet them or whatever it is. These are great ways to practice, because a lot of us, we try to practice teaching our dog how to do it in the moment, which is the worst way to learn. So creating stage scenarios or taking notice, my dog didn't perform the way that I wanted here, so I need to recreate the situation, let's make it the easiest version possible, and let's break it down step by step by step, and we're going to practice step one over and over without going to any of the other steps till you do step one the way that I want every time. Only then do I go to step two and step three. So it takes a little bit of time, but she's such a well-behaved dog. The Guardians, most of my clients are spending so much time just trying to get to zero. She's already at zero. They're going to be able to go up. So it's not a lot of things. Like outside, we notice that she doesn't like to sit near humans. And she's a rescue dog, so we don't know what happened to her before, but probably some sort of negative interaction. So one of the things I showed the Guardians was to take a treat, just squish it, a meat treat, and let her start nibbling on it, and then we reached under and started petting her. And so if we do that enough, then eventually we can help her realize that when a human asks you to sit, they're just going to give you a treat and massage you. They're not going to do the bad things that happened before. So it's a good example of recognizing your dog has a little bit of a peculiar behavior or a tick of some sort, recreating a situation and adding a positive element to it so the dog can practice and get over whatever that thing is, so the rest of her life she doesn't have a problem sitting next to people. All right, what else do we go over? We went over petting with a purpose and passive training. Remember, petting with a purpose is if she initiates contact with you, although in this house, we pet her so much that she doesn't really have to ask for it. But we're going to ask her to earn that affection by sitting, laying down. You can teach her to touch her nose to your hand. I have a targeting exercise. You can search my website for that as well and show her how to do that. I'll actually probably show you guys when we get done this video, because it's super simple. But if she's sitting here and I want to pet her, make her touch her nose, and then I pet her. So I say target. So I'm making the dog earn the affection. That will boost her self-esteem. It will increase her respect for the humans, and it helps you practice whatever the sit or the touch or whatever the targeting exercise is. And that really can be very beneficial. Let me see. So petting with a purpose is if you want to pet the dog, you ask the dog to do something, or the dog has to prepay for the attention by sitting proactively ahead of time. Now, make sure you pet under the chin whenever possible. Say just the command word, and try not to over-pronunciate. Then you can pet as much or as little as you want after that. Passive training is waiting for the dog to do whatever you want. It's kind of like what we talked about in the video above. So every time Lucy comes to you, pet her and say, come. Every time she sits, pet her and say, sit. Every time she brings you, a certain toy, name all your individual toys. When she takes her first bite of food for 3 months, you say, Garats, or whatever the name of the restaurant or dish you want. And after a while, we're creating command words in a vocabulary where she understands, and she's rewarded for doing it. And we're taking away the baggage by saying, sit, sit, sit. We're telling the dog to do something. Well, the dog's, by not sitting, you keep on asking me. You're interested in me. So in this case, we're not doing that. We're just waiting when the dog sits on its own. We're rewarding after the fact. Remember, we have 3 seconds to correct a reward, so try to be Johnny on the spot. I use the word paycheck if I suspect someone is petting without a purpose, and I say testify if I think that somebody is missing an opportunity to recognize or reward the dog. I also talked to the Guardians about coming up with a list of the official command words and saying vocabulary if we're using a different version of the word. Most of us come up with all these riffs or variations or slang, and it's just harder for the dog to have to remember all of those words. It's much easier if we all say come instead of come here, over here, here, girl, and so on. Let me see. Make sure that humans are eating something before they feed the dog. 5 or more bites is all it takes. For the leash, make sure you're practicing that leashing technique so she's nice and calm on the walks. And then when you have guests come over, kind of take note of her behavior. One of the things that she does is she kind of leaves and just sits in the edge of the yard when a guests are over here. Kind of her way of saying, I don't like the guests to be here. Well, having a whole house full of guests might be overwhelming. So maybe try to set up stage scenarios where you have one friend come over, buy a 6-pack of beer or some wine or whatever it is you like, and make it a social endeavor. But when you have your friends come over, I would give each one, you might want to get like one of these, and just give it to each one of your friends when they come over, loaded up with treats. I'm like notoriously single. And so because I'm notoriously single, I like shower and brush my teeth and all that fun stuff because I meet a girl who's crazy enough to let me take her out on a date. I want to be ready for action. So if the dog comes over and smells that the guest has these delicious treats that I love, well, that guest might be given at any point. So I'm going to linger around the guest, and when the guest asks me to sit, well, I'm going to sit right away. So if every time now a guest come over, they get loaded with accoutrement of, whatever, these high value training treats, well, then I create a positive association with the guests who are over here. And the guests can also help you practice the recall, like we showed you after the video, and also practice that technique of squeezing the treat and letting her chew on it, and then reaching down and petting on her chin while she's chewing the treat to keep her from moving away. Is there anything else we wanted to go over?
Bathroom on the leash.
Bathroom on the leash. Okay, so basically she just won't go on the bathroom on the leash. So what I would suggest the guardians do is start keeping a journal. Just write down when she poops the rest of this week in the morning. And then, so you kind of know what her regular schedule is. The guardians feed her on a pretty consistent schedule. What I would do then is on Saturday, about a half an hour before that time, I would feed her breakfast. Now, it's probably going to be different than when you normally feed her. Well, actually, probably pretty close. So make sure, before you do this, about a half an hour before you feed her, put about an inch worth of water in her bowl with her dry kibble and swirl it around so it's all wet. And after an hour, they will absorb all the water. Water goes through dogs in about 45 minutes. When the body will extract it, and then we're ready to jettison. So basically what we do is we load up the kibble, and then right before we feed her, we get about 1 or 2 pints of hot water, not boiling hot, but pretty warm, and pour it in there and swirl it around. So now she's got to drink like 2 or 3 pints worth of water, and then the food is soaked with water. And then basically sit here and wait for about 10 minutes, and when she starts whining and whimpering and she wants to go outside, put her on a leash and take her for like a half an hour walk. And have a poop bag with you and have some very, very high value training treats. And don't tell her to potty. Just walk her, and eventually she's going to try to pull back to go back home. I want to be off the leash so I can pee. Nope, we're still trucking. Eventually, get to a point where she won't be able to hold it anymore. And so when she wants to poop or pee, just say the word, I think potty is what you guys use. So say potty once when she starts going. And then and don't say it too excitedly. And when she gets done, pop out 5 treats and give her a treat and say potty. Let her finish chewing that. Potty, finish chewing that. Do that 5 treats in a row. And then keep on walking. If it's urine, you know that she has the poop. So you're going to keep on, as I spray, you're going to keep on walking until she poops. But you might get a couple of urinations because we've loaded up her system. We're kind of cheating to set her up in a situation where she doesn't have the ability to hold it anymore because we waited strategically a length of time and we're on this walk. And eventually she does it. She gets richly rewarded. And after a while, she's like, oh, peeing on the leash is a good thing. Normally I pee in the backyard. They don't say anything. I pee on the leash and I get 5 for the best treats I've ever had. Well, can we go for a walk again? I got to take a poop. All right. Lucy, come here, sweetheart. Lucy, come. It's like, no, I'm not going to come because I've already got a bone. Exactly. She's got a bully stick. And the bully sticks that I get are odor-free. You can get those at the Green Spot. And I mean, another nice thing for her to have, dogs, when they get stressed out, they chew to relieve their stress. So if you do have a lot of people coming over, giving her a big bully stick, at the Green Spot, one of my favorite things to give my dogs are cow's knees. Giving her something that she can really direct her chewing and getting that anxiety out. They also enjoy doing it. It creates a positive association. She's channeling some of that energy. And also, before you have guests come over, she's not a super high energy dog, but exercising her before guests come over can also be a nice, productive way to set her up for success. Well, normally this is when I call the dog over and I give them a treat and say, this is Lucy and this is Lucy's romantic success. But she's behind the camera chewing on a bull penis, and we're not going to interrupt her for that. And then one last little tip. Avoid calling your dog when it is distracted. So if I kept on calling her over and over again and she's more interested in the bully stick, I'm going to lose that battle, and she's practicing not listening to me. So I guess that's one last thing I went over in our puppy classes. I only say a command word 3 times. I say it once in a normal tone of voice. Lucy, come. She doesn't come. Within whatever reasonable period of time I realize she's not going to come, then I'm going to say it in a very high-pitched voice. Lucy, come! Lucy! Yes. Well, you can't see it because she's behind the camera, but she didn't actually stand up and take a couple steps. She's trying to chew it really fast. So we're not going to make her do that. But so say it once, normal tone of voice. Second, high-pitched tone of voice. And when she looks at you, I can't do it because I'm sitting already, but crouch down. And if she is really standoffish, try to align yourself sideways. Front-facing is confrontational dog. So crouch down and turn sideways. And then if she doesn't come in, then I would get up and walk towards her Very casually, I attach the leash, and then she's going to come with me, or we're going to follow through and make sure that she does whatever it is. We want to understand that listening to us is not optional. And I know that said that was the last thing, but I'm going to give you one last thing. So when you call the dog, I'm going to hold my hand like this with a 45-degree angle. Have a treat in your hand first before you even call the dog, and you're going to hold it out like this. When Lucy looks at me, it looks like I'm holding something in my hand. I'm going to say, Lucy, come. If she doesn't come, then I'm going to say in a low and a high-pitched voice, kind of like what I just got done talking about. And when she looks at me, I'm going to start lowering it, literally lower it all the way until you get to the floor. The lower you go, the more accessible it is for the dog. When she comes to you, if this is the dog, I usually like to raise it over the dog's head. It puts their butt down, and when they sit, then I lower it, let them lick it off my hand, and then I tickle under their chin. Now, again, because I talked about her having some sort of issue, so the guardians might want to forego the sitting part at first, and just when she comes, give her the treat for coming, and then have a second treat, hold it out, let her chew on it, and reach under and tickle under her chin, and help her get over that fear of sitting next to the guardian. So she just comes, I sit in front of a human, they give me a treat and pet me, and it's all wonderful and positive. All right, well, behind the camera is Lucy, and this is Lucy's roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.